You're visiting Belgrade again, you're meeting various officials here. What are the main topics?
Well, as you know, every 6 months we are still reporting to the Security Council about the progress we're making in our cases, but also in regional cooperation. So I had indeed a number of official meetings with the Minister of Justice, the War Crimes Prosecutor, the State Prosecutor. But the main reason this time is really to have this regional conference, regional meeting with prosecutors from Serbia, of course, but also from Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina and Montenegro, who are all dealing with war crimes cases.
Have things changed during your last visits here? Are our will to cooperate still strong enough?
Yeah, I mean, there are of course two different aspects. One is really Serbia and the national war crimes strategy in Serbia and issues between our office and Serbia, and the other one is in relation to regional cooperation, what we are mainly discussing. So on the first topic with Serbia, we just sent yesterday our report to the Security Council. To start on the positive side, well, we have seen that finally a number of additional prosecutors, assistant prosecutors have been appointed to work on war crimes cases. That's something we have asked for, the European Union has asked for the last 2-3 years. It's something where also the President, Aleksandar Vučić, got involved himself to make sure that we are getting additional resources in Serbia to deal with war crimes cases. That's positive. Now, it is a reality that the number of cases is still quite limited, the number of new cases, I think 9 in the last 1.5 years. The majority of those cases are cases which are coming from Bosnia-Herzegovina. Those cases are not really in relation to high-level perpetrators, so there's definitely room for improvement. Now, I had very good meetings with the War Crimes Chief Prosecutor. She indeed informed me that a number of important investigations are ongoing, that results should be expected in the near future. And we are having a really good cooperation between our offices. For example, we organized together only a few weeks ago a joint training on conflict-related sexual violence investigations. So as I'm saying, there are, I think, better conditions to produce more results, but we still wait for these results.
Do you have any idea why?
Well, as I said, the resources was an issue. Was an issue in the past. It shouldn't be an issue anymore, as there are more resources now. But in general terms, we all know that war crimes investigations in Serbia, like in Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, are not very popular investigations. And if you have countries where convicted war criminals are considered as heroes, international crimes being denied, even if there have been major convictions for genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes. So if politicians are glorifying convicted war criminals, well, I don't think that this is a positive signal to witnesses to come forward and testify.
Are there any political issues in that?
Well, I think it would be too easy to say it's only a political issue, but you know, I also had just a meeting with the Prosecutor General, so the State Chief Prosecutor, and I understand that cooperation, regional cooperation in organized crime cases, in terrorism cases, in trafficking cases is going well, but cooperation in relation to war crimes cases is not going well. So obviously there are a number of political obstacles or lack of political support and lack of political commitment to really see war crimes prosecutors being successful.
Various NGOs basically accuse the present government and the previous one led by Aleksandar Vučić that they are responsible for the slowing down in this matter. What's your opinion? Have you seen such decrease of work, for example, cooperation for the last few years? Well,
we have seen that regional cooperation is going backwards, and we definitely would like to see more support also from the political level. Now, personally, I have a good cooperation with the Minister of Justice. We had a good meeting yesterday. We agreed to disagree on a number of issues, but on a number of other fronts, I think we have a good cooperation. I think the government, you know, took initiatives to put additional prosecutors in place and to create additional posts. This, I would say, is a positive development. So, but of course, there can be more support. and we would welcome any additional support, obviously.
You already received very few promises from Serbian government during the previous years. By experience, can you tell me, do they fulfill their promises? Do you have the end result?
Well, the results are not there yet. We speak about thousands of cases which are still ongoing in Bosnia-Herzegovina, more than 3,000 cases which are still open, and of course hundreds of cases which direct links to Serbia and to Croatia. Because it is a reality that for many of the crimes committed in Bosnia-Herzegovina during the 90s, the alleged perpetrators are in Serbia, living a peaceful life, and they should be investigated and prosecuted. So, well, we interact with the government and the President's office for the last 10 years. I think there has been support coming from the political level, but of course it is never enough. We would like to see even more support, and the results are not there yet. So we hope that by fulfilling its commitment to have more prosecutors appointed, commitment the government took, and which is also part of the National War Crime Strategy, we hope now that in a second phase there will also be more results.
But there's an impression that it's just words, that we don't see any results for the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years.
The results are not there yet. The pace is very, very slow. But we see some progress and some on promises where the government delivered. There is now the new war crimes strategy and the overall strategy related to the chapters 23, 24, which are updated. We definitely hope that this has a direct positive impact on the continuation on investigations on war crimes cases. But you know, we want basically to be someone providing all the support necessary. I mean, we cannot change the political reality. We cannot change the fact that there are a number of politicians in this country, like in other countries, who glorify war criminals, which is really very unfortunate and which is an insult to victims who have suffered the crimes committed by those individuals. But we really hope that there are still enough politicians in this country who are in charge of offices who will support this process, and we want to play a positive role by giving access to our databases, to giving access to the information we still have in The Hague, by still having this liaison prosecutor system. As you know, we have a Serbian and the Bosnian prosecutor on a permanent basis in The Hague working on Serbian cases. We are continuing to provide capacity building and training, especially for the new 6 or 8 prosecutors or assistant prosecutors which arrived. We want to be involved in making sure that they have the knowledge to push the agenda forward. So we are still quite critical about the past. We are critical about the current situation, but we are, as we say in diplomatic terms, cautiously optimistic that we can report progress in 6 months' time. But if there's not progress, I will also tell it.
But talking about the progress and the cooperation, let's go to one of the examples. We have the most recent example of 2 members of the Radical Party. The High Court in Serbia said that they cannot be transferred to The Hague. What does it say to you?
Well, it is indeed not a case where my office is directly involved, because it was a so-called amicus curiae prosecutor, so an independent prosecutor who had been appointed by the judges to look into this contempt case. Well, we make a different legal analysis than the courts in Serbia in relation to this issue, especially as in the past, in almost identical situations, people were easily surrendered to The Hague. So we definitely make a different legal analysis. So from a legal perspective, we disagree with the decision taken by the courts. And in general, we are of the opinion that there is an obligation to cooperate with the Hague Tribunal, which has been put in place by the Security Council, and which implies an obligation to cooperate for all member states of the United Nations. So we are of the opinion that today there is a legal basis to have both surrendered to The Hague. And if there would be no legal basis, well, it would be the duty of the government to create one. Again, this is my legal analysis of a case in which my office, the Office of the Prosecutor, is not directly involved.
But there are different interpretations of the Serbian law on cooperation of the tribunal that says that it's aimed at people accused for grave breach of international humanitarian rights only.
Well, you know, in the statute of the mechanism, this issue has been clarified. So if you look at the statutes of the mechanism, contempt is one of the areas where international cooperation is required. And you know, the mechanism is a much smaller and less ambitious version of the ICTY. So it would absolutely make no sense that in the mechanism there would be a broader area of cooperation than for ICTY. So for us, the legal situation is quite clear. And we expect that Serbia is finding a solution. So
now it's up to judiciaries in the states to deal with the past, having in mind that the Hague Tribunal's impact stays, let's say, controversial. There is common opinion that it hasn't bring justice and the reconciliation, at least to the expected point, if any. Can you expect the judiciaries in the region to do the job alone?
Well, I somehow obviously disagree with your assessment. You know, I hear this quite often, the comment to say that, well, ICTY did not play a positive role in reconciliation because every time a judgment is coming out in The Hague, one group is happy, one group is unhappy, so all the problems are coming up again. My point is really to say that, of course, accountability, justice cannot automatically lead to reconciliation. Reconciliation has to come from within a society. And it's only once the society is ready that reconciliation can take place. But I think that accountability is a precondition. I don't think that society can move forward if there has not been a clear decision about what happened in the past. And I think that one of the acceptable criticism towards The Hague was to say, well, this was justice delivered far away from the region in partially a different language, a little bit different legal system. And that's why we think that the continuation of our work by the national judiciary is very, very important, because this is a judiciary which is much closer to the communities affected, perpetrators and victims communities. So we really think that it is crucial and important that now, so many years after the conflict, there is the judiciary in Serbia, Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina and Montenegro who are dealing and continuing working on these cases.
We can often hear that the region is stuck in the past, that the nationalism is growing, that we're going backwards. Do you share that opinion?
I'm doing this job now for 11 years, right? And there have been phases in those 11 years where I was more optimistic than today, where my analysis is that indeed nationalism is very much present. The denial of the wrongdoing of the past is commonplace. Glorification of war criminals is very much accepted. I would even say that even the international community is not reacting anymore in the same way we would like them to react in light of the overall political situation in the world, where accountability and justice is probably not playing anymore the same role, unfortunately, it was playing a few years ago. But I noticed, also speaking with diplomats, that there is a growing awareness in many capitals and many embassies, also here in Belgrade, that the situation is far from moving in the right direction, and that additional energy needs to be put in making sure that those cases are dealt with. And at a personal level, because you also asked my opinion on a personal level, I find it extremely disappointing that, in fact, all those individuals who have been convicted in The Hague and elsewhere are still considered as national heroes, because they are exactly the opposite. No one has been convicted in The Hague or at national courts because they have defended their country or because they were fighting other soldiers. They've all been convicted for grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions, meaning they are convicted because they tolerated or were actively involved that their soldiers were executing prisoners. They had knowledge or were directly involved that entire villages were destroyed. They are responsible for massive rapes that took place. So there's nothing heroic about their attitude and nothing heroic about what they have been convicted for. And this I find very, very disappointing that, you know, there is less attention given to the more than 4,000 victims and survivors who testified, who told their stories about the crimes they suffered from all sides to the conflict. There's less attention given to their stories than to the war criminals who are, you know, received at military academies, whose memoirs are published by Ministry of Defense, who should really take its distance towards this kind of individuals, which are the opposite of what an experienced general should be.
So you said you're disappointed, but is there any danger in that?
Well,
I mean, what does it say about our reconciliation with the past, accepting the past?
You know, we have seen other parts in the world after the Second World War or in South Africa where, you know, reconciliation was a big issue. I don't think that there's any progress in relation to reconciliation. You know, when I'm in Sarajevo and I notice that 3 different history books are used depending if it's a more Serbian, Croatian or Bosnian school, if there's no common understanding about the past and even a refusal to look together into the past, how can you agree on a common and joint future? So there's definitely a risk for the society. I think the current generation of politicians, many of them having experienced the war, are really putting a burden on the new generation by not telling the truth about what happened. So it is definitely dangerous and it needs to be addressed.
European President Donald Tusk said on Saturday that the historical baggage will evoke demons in the region if no effort is invested in this process. I understood that you agree with him, at least to some point, but how much is the international community responsible for that?
You know, I experienced in my last 10 years that people always expect a solution from outside. It's even more so the case in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where, you know, the state structures are very fragile and not very, very strong, where always solutions are expected from outside. I really think that it is time for responsible politicians in the different countries of the former Yugoslavia to join their energy and forces to move the agenda of reconciliation forward. I don't think this can be imposed from outside. You know, you have the conditionality in relation to EU enlargement. This can only achieve something but cannot really change dynamics in the region. We have seen that there has been some progress in relation to the missing person issue. You know, I know that there has been talks between the presidents of Serbia and Croatia to at least move this area forward, because probably would agree that everyone wants to find the remaining bodies of deceased person to be able to return them to families. But my point there is also the following. How do you want people coming forward? Because for every single victim which is buried somewhere, there are at least one, if not many people who know where those victims are. We speak about more than almost 10,000 missing persons still. So there are in the different countries people who know where they are. But how do you want them to come forward to say where the victims are, de facto confirming the existence of the crime, if you have on the other hand the political leadership glorifying Lazarevic and others who are responsible for the crimes for which we want those people to come forward. So the overall climate is even undermining issues which are of common interest, like the search for missing persons.
Yeah, but you just said that it's up to ourselves, it's time that we do the job. But can we do it? I mean, you gave us the opportunity to do it. And as you said, in the last few years, we see the decrease. What does it say? Can we do it alone, or we need the pressure from the international community again, since it gave the results in the past?
Well, I think that incentives are very, very important. Again, my office is not involved in deciding who is joining the European Union or not the European Union, but I mean, the European Union has a number of values. The rule of law is one of the major pillars. Accountability is one of the major pillars. So I think it's very logical that the European institutions, that the European Union is saying, look, those who want to join the club need to meet a certain standard.
They're doing it, but are they putting enough pressure?
Well, it is obvious that the conditionality was much stronger when there were still fugitives at large. I remember when Karadzic and Mladic were at large, conditionality was a very, very strong tool. The European Union played an important role, so I don't want to be too critical, but it is obvious that I think that the international community still needs to speak out very clearly about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in terms of public behavior of politicians. But I also think that additional support remains needed to help the countries moving forward in terms of democracy, in making sure that police officers and prosecutors are in a position to do a better job, and to really convince politicians to let prosecutors and police officers doing their job. Because this is not only a problem in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in Serbia, but also in Croatia, which is now an EU member state, where the situation is far from being perfect, where you see glorification on a regular basis, and where the progress on war crimes cases is also not satisfactory. So it is even not a question of being EU or not EU. It is really an overall attitude and an acceptance that people of your own community have committed crimes in the past, that you have to accept them, to acknowledge them, to make sure that it's not happening again.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.